Today, our verse is Matthew 16, verse 23. But he turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." Jesus was with his disciples in the district of Caesarea Philippi. In this area, Herod had a palace. There was a big temple called the Temple of Pan, a short distance from the palace. It is within that region that Jesus asked his disciples the challenging question: who do the people say the Son of Man is? Their answers reflected what they had heard people say, but Jesus asked them what they thought about him. Peter responded, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." Jesus was pleased with the powerful proclamation of Peter, that he gave Peter the primacy among the apostles. But when Jesus told them about his imminent suffering, Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. That such must not happen to him. It is the action of Peter that leads to our verse. "Get behind me, Satan." The Peter who had just declared that Jesus was the Son of the living God suffers a rebuke. An excellent lesson for us. Never be deceived that you are always under the influence of the Spirit of God. Satan could find a way into our thoughts and our actions in his tricky ways, as he did to Peter. Another lesson is that when we are at the summit of a spiritual experience, we must be watchful and careful. That is when Satan comes to bring us down. He tried it with Jesus in the wilderness after he fasted for 40 days and 40 nights. Peter just made an emphatic declaration, and Jesus gave him the keys of the kingdom and the power to bind and loose. Satan came. Was Jesus referring to Peter as Satan, or that the spirit of Satan was acting in Peter? When the Bible speaks about Satan, it refers to the enemy or adversary of God, or of God's people or God's children. So many instances in the Bible. To understand what Jesus means, we must look at the very next words. "You are a hindrance to me." Peter was tempting Jesus to abandon his role and mission for which he came into the world. At that point, Jesus was not happy because Peter was siding with Satan, the enemy of God, who would not want Jesus to accomplish his mission. There is a strong message here. When we align with the work of the devil, we possess the spirit of devil. He possesses our thoughts and sometimes our actions. When Satan is at work in us, we set our minds on the things of men, not on the things of God. We must not take our knowledge of Jesus for granted. We need to nourish and develop it continually. In the same way, we should never presume to know the mind of God. We learned from Peter that there is a thin line sometimes between the Spirit of God and the spirit of Satan. We can only know the mind of God when we seek his face on every single issue and not presume a general knowledge. Finally, we must not be comfortable only with the Jesus of glory. That was the challenge of Peter. He could not comprehend that the Messiah would suffer. God can act and does act through the so-called terrible events in our lives. Lord, open our eyes to what you are doing in our lives. Help us to listen to your voice within us and never the spirit of Satan, who may suggest beautiful ideas based on what the world wants. Amen.